Hey, welcome to Project Recovery, a podcast about addiction. More importantly, it's about recovery, and it's brought to you by our friends at knowyourscript.org. I'm Casey Scott. That's Dr. Matt. You know, just this Sunday, Dr. Matt, we celebrated Father's Day.
Yes, that's true.
And my kids were wondering, what should we get Dad for Father's Day? Does he need a golf shirt? Does he need a tie? And I was like, I don't need a tie. I don't plan on going to court anytime soon.
Paddleboard?
No paddleboard. My ex-wife got that in the divorce.
Oh.
Yeah. And which I think she sold right after that. But that's okay. We're not here to talk about that.
No.
But I said, you know what? I don't really need anything. Because the fact that you guys gave me a second shot means the world to me. And in all honesty, that's what I wanted to do. My whole life, I just wanted to be the best parent I could be. And there was times that I was the worst parent I could be. And it's because there was a lot of reasons why. But the honest answer is I wasn't sure what I was doing. You know, I was talking to our guest, and we're going to introduce her in just a second. But I think one of the biggest lies we tell our children is that we know everything. You know, they look to us like we have...
Well, they kind of assume it. I mean, we don't have to tell them that. When you're a kid, you think your parents know everything. And then if we don't, correct them, they might believe it.
But I remember being a kid, and even now that I'm 47 years old. When I was a kid and my parents were 47, I was like, man, they've got it all figured out. And they know
and they're old.
And they're old. And life seems to be so easy for them.
Right.
And now I'm 47, I still don't have it figured out. And there's still days I'm trying to figure out which way is up. And the thing is that we don't know. We know what we know, but we're learning just like you are.
Well, do you know why we think that way? It's because people are prone to outcome-oriented thinking.
Okay, talk to me about that.
Okay. Outcome-oriented thinking is we think that when the outcome that we're working towards happens, then we'll be happy, or then, life will feel good, or then I can relax. And to some degree, you have to set goals and work towards outcomes. But if you're always focused on the outcome, you're always kind of waiting to be happy. Process-oriented thinking, you're still setting a goal because there's a process to get to the goal, but you're focusing on the process. You're like, I'm going to enjoy all the steps along the way until I get to whatever the outcome is. And if you think globally and in big terms, that's life. The outcome is death. And so you might as well enjoy the process. But even something like raising your kids, right? Like, I guess technically that job's never done. But if you think about raising them until they're independent, it's like, would we wait until they're independent to enjoy our kids, to see how they turned out? Or can we enjoy them all the steps along the way? And so I think that's a good lesson for all of us, is to try to push ourselves to be process-oriented thinkers, because then we're still working towards our goals, but we're enjoying and focusing on the steps along the way.
And I think that goes back to, summer's here. A lot of people are taking road trips. And it's not about the destination. It's about the journey.
That's another way to say it. Yeah, definitely.
And enjoy the journey. I remember when my oldest was first born, my mother-in-law, I'm not sure what to do. And she goes, just love every moment. Because that's, before you know it, that's going to change. And so you got to make sure that you're present. I think you're 100% right. If we're just fixated on that 18 when they're out and then wanting to love them, we've missed a lot along the way.
Right. And I think we do it to ourselves too as parents, where we think, well, when I get good at doing this, then I'll feel good about my parenting. And I think if you are focused on the love and the relationship, then you can make mistakes as a parent, still love yourself, and the kids still love and appreciate you too. So,
are you ready for your mind to be blown?
Yes.
Let's turn that and apply that to recovery.
Okay.
There's so many people who think that the recovery is just about not using substance or drugs.
Right.
And they go, once I'm done that, then I'm healed, or it's over. And that's not what it's about, because people relapse. Life happens, and you're thrown these curveballs, and it's going to test you. It's going to test your tools in your belt to see if you can stay sober. But it's not about that. It's a journey.
Well, and I would even, with recovery, I guess one thing to also realize is, if you're waiting until some date in the future to feel good about yourself as a sober individual, you're missing out also on the learning at each step, right? So you can look at a relapse as a failure, or you can look at it as an opportunity to learn what did I not get that I needed, or what did I do that I shouldn't have done, or what did I not do that I should have done? Like, those sorts of things are learning experiences all along the way, and you can forgive yourself and grow and feel good all along the way until eventually you're maintaining a sobriety that feels like the life you want it to be, instead of getting to that point and realizing, well, why aren't I happy now?
Yeah. In recovery, a lot of people will tell you right from the top of their head their sobriety birthday. Mine is September 3rd. Coming up, that'll be 3 years. And I think it's very important in the beginning because those are those small goals that you can attain. And I remember the first time I set the year, my goal to be sober for a year. I was like, I got to do a year. I just want to see what a year's like. And I got the year, and I was like, wow, that was pretty good. And I learned a lot, but I was still kind of raw and still trying to figure things out. And then I was like, people were like, well, now you got your first year. What are you going to do? I was like, I guess I'm going to go for another one. Let's see how that goes.
Right.
And so I reached 2 years. And I have learned so much in the past 2.5 years. I can't even begin to tell you what I've learned, not only about myself, but my family and the way the world works. I haven't got it figured out by any means, but every day I'm learning, and every day I'm thankful for another sober day and another trip around the sun.
Well, as you're talking about that, it's kind of interesting. I'm thinking, I guess I don't hear you talk about the date very often, if ever. I do hear you talk a lot about what you're doing, and so that's the process. And you do talk a lot about like what you're doing to stay sober, and the exercising and the different things that you do. I think that's cool. So,
and that's what it's about to me. I mean, I'm not fixated on that date, and this is going to make people mad. People go, so you're done drinking forever? I don't know that. And because
what does that mean to you? Because you're right, that rubs people the wrong way. So to you, what does that mean when you say that? Because you say that all the time.
Because here's the deal: if I say never, I know the way my brain works, and it will get fixated on that never part again. And that will become like the Raven's Heart, Edgar Allan Poe,
the Telltale Heart.
Yeah, the boom 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 boom.
Yep.
All of us, if I
the Raven was a separate poem, but okay, I got you.
But if I do that, then that's all my head hears is the boom 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 boom.
Right.
And it starts to get louder. Yeah. And it starts to get louder.
Well, you create a conflict that doesn't have to be there. So you get in conflict with that word never. I never. And those of us who have a little bit of oppositional nature to us still, even though we're old, we don't like to be told never, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's ourselves telling ourselves never.
A lot of people, when I say that, what they hear is that I'm leaving the back door open. Trust me when I tell you that back door is closed. I'm not saying that that's what I'm going to do.
So do you think this is like a mind trick you're doing with yourself?
I really do.
Yeah?
I think it's a Jedi mind trick. These are not the droids you're looking for.
Okay.
And it just helps the nonsense between my ears make sense.
Yeah.
And I can't get fixated on that never part. I need to be fixated on what's right now and keep moving forward. And this allows me to free up that space and that energy in my mind to continue doing what I'm doing today.
Be in the present. And we've talked a lot on this show about how hyper focus on the future creates a sense of being out of control in the present because the future is uncertain. And so if you're always talking about this never, 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 that's a future thing. And in the present, you can't relax and be part of your process. So I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
And they taught us in recovery. That's called future tripping. The reality is that I can't predict the future.
I love that you and I talk about the same thing, but we use very, very different terms.
I know.
Yeah.
But I
future
can't,
tripping. I like it. That's cool.
Future tripping. I can't predict the future, and I can't change the past. The only thing I can do is live in the moment right now and be present. Right. And so that's what I can. Those are the things that I control and affect right now, and that's the only power that I have right now is to be able to control and affect what's going on right now, right at this moment. And they say in recovery, if you've got 1 foot in the future, 1 foot in the past, you're pissing on the present.
Again, we talk about things differently, but we mean the same stuff, right?
But it makes sense.
Yeah, right.
And so I would rather focus on the present right now and take control of that.
That's mindfulness, right? Being focused in the present. If you learn from the past and you're aware of the future, but you act in the present, this is the only time you ever get anything done is right now.
And that's what we're doing with this podcast. So we want to thank you for stopping by today and listening to this. We've got a great guest. Her name is Terra Leben. She reached out a while ago, so far in fact that she didn't remember why she reached out. And I said, hey, would you like to come on? And she was like, yeah, I think I would. She's got a great story.
Sometimes we're slow to get back to people a little bit.
Well, yeah, and then that's my fault.
I'll blame you, sure.
Well, I'll take it. It's accountable. 100% honest. It's my fault.
It's ours. We can share it.
Yeah, but she'll be our guest today. Thank you for listening to Project Recovery. It is a KSL podcast. Welcome back to Project Recovery. I am Casey Scott. That is Dr. Matt Woolley. He's a clinical psychologist. Our guest today is Terra Leben. She reached out a while ago. Do you remember how long ago it was that you reached out?
Maybe January. I think it was January.
And what made you reach out originally? Because in the text you sent, you said, I'd like to share my story. I've shared it a couple of times, and people said, you know what? You should really reach out to Project Recovery and share your story.
Everything that I went through had to be for a purpose. And if that's to help somebody else who is that low, right? And maybe just give them that hope that no matter where you are, you can definitely recover and you can be happy.
And I want to stop you before we get into your story, because I hear people say this all the time, Dr. Matt. Everything that I have gone through had to be for a purpose. And I think that's a positive way to talk about the stuff that we put ourselves through. Mm-hmm. But is it necessary? Because here's the thing. I would like to go back and have a different life. If I could, I would, but I can't. So I've got to make the best out of what I've been given and the cards that have been dealt to me. And unfortunately, I dealt some of these cards to myself. But the thing is I want to make my mess my message.
Yeah, I think you can make it purposeful. Not everybody does. And so I like the mental state that comes from saying, I've gone through all this for a purpose, because hopefully what that person is meaning is that I'm making a positive purpose out of this. But I agree with you. Most people would like to go back and not suffer in the ways that their addiction has created the suffering in their lives and their families' lives. And we unfortunately see some people that they may even get sober, but they feel resentful about the experience instead of accepting and finding purpose in it. So I think all tragedies have potential purpose, if you want to think of it that way.
Yeah.
But you have to make it happen, and that's my opinion.
The thing is for me, because of what I've gone through, and most of it was self-inflicted, I think there's been some great things that came out of it, and it's the one that I'm more empathetic, I'm more loving, I'm more understanding, and those are things that I learned because of where I was and where I am.
I think you're more genuinely open, and I think people hear me say that they were like, well, Casey's always open. And it's like, well, but you weren't always open about your stuff,
no.
Right? Like you're Mr. Gregarious, Mr. Outgoing, life of the party, everybody feels like they're your friend, but you'd go home and never having shared your real experience, you felt lonely. And so I think that's one thing I've noticed that you've changed in over time, is that like you're a more authentic person, you're more open because, well, you had to be, I guess. Well,
yeah.
You didn't have to be.
No.
You could have hidden after the public stuff that happened, but you didn't.
But making the mess my message. So Terra, you wanted to share your reason for being here today, and that is because you've learned some things. So before we get to that, let's find out the story of Terra. Where does it begin?
All right. So I was raised, and my childhood was in West Valley.
West Valley, Utah.
West Valley, Utah, Magna border.
For the listeners, that's on the way heading west. Like if you were to head to Wendover, Nevada, it's west of Salt Lake City.
Yeah. So I didn't, as a kid, I didn't know. We were pretty poor. I didn't know that we were poor because life was, great. I am the oldest of three kids. I have a younger sister and a younger brother. My mom and dad were very hard workers. They weren't home a lot, so I was home alone a lot. And as a kid, I was the let me do it kid. Like, I don't need anybody. I want to grow up really fast. Don't tell me what to do kind of thing going on.
You like to do things for yourself.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. But I had a very, very vivid imagination that I lived in very, very early on and almost exclusively. So
you like escape into your imaginary world? Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And very grandiose imagination. Like one day I'm going to save the world and stop wars. And if everybody would just love each other, the world would be such a better place, and this is where I lived. And so my parents were gone a lot, and it put a lot of responsibility on me for my younger brother and sister. I was an 80s kid, so it was come home by yourself with your key under your shirt kind of thing.
Latchkey kids.
Latchkey kid, yeah. So I would walk down 3500 South, unlock the door, kindergarten, And this whole time, what I know now that I didn't know then, I was a very nervous kid, full of anxiety. And I wouldn't display. I don't think I displayed very nervous because I would always. My dad used to call me "you're blunt with no tact" because I would say exactly what was on my mind. But I was very nervous, especially with my siblings, and tried to very finicky and control everything they were doing, make sure my sister's hair was perfect, and because I'd get them ready for school.
So there's a term I think that you're going for here called parentified. Mm-hmm. Have you heard that term before? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's where it's often the oldest. And when parents necessarily do need to be off to work, sometimes a lot of that parenting responsibility of the younger siblings falls on the oldest. And even if you like to do things yourself, unfortunately, what can happen is you kind of miss some of your own childhood, that latitude to be a goofy kid who isn't feeling responsible all the time. And it sounds like you're saying that's sort of what was happening for you.
Right. And whether it's real or perceived, that's how I perceived it.
Well, then it's real, because that was
real in
perception
my mind.
Is reality.
So as I got older, I did have a couple really good friends, but I noticed I was different. We weren't raised in the predominant religion here, and it didn't really cause issues for me until it did, and I felt very excluded. And in fact, I went into this kid thing they were doing. I'm not even sure all the terms they used, and they had told me I'm not part of this religion, so I can't be there. And so that first initial absolute rejection, what's wrong with me? Because I'm not like all these other people, and I already felt a little different anyway. So when I was 8, I don't know what happened. I just started feeling I didn't want to live.
Already having suicidal thoughts at the age of 8.
Actually, I attempted. So I had this school play I skipped out on because my parents weren't going to come anyway, right? This is my thinking. That my dad did actually show up to this one, and I wasn't there. But I went home. I got a bottle of Tums, that big jumbo bottle, sat in my closet and ate them all, waiting to die. Thank God I didn't know that Tums wouldn't kill me. I'm very grateful now. Yes. But I sat there and then.
But what a sad little person you must have felt like at that time. That you would go to that extreme. And it's not that kids don't feel anxiety and don't feel depression. They certainly do. But to take it to that level, you must have been feeling like that for quite some time.
Yeah, I was. And piecing back together, I had a sexual abuse situation when I was 6. And before that, I just remember, it was something that had happened to me and my sister. And it was one time, and the mom came in and caught it happening with these older teenage boys, and then she beat me with a spoon.
The mom beat you?
Yeah, and put me in a corner all day. So I was deathly afraid to say anything to my parents.
Oh, my goodness.
Deathly afraid. But the next day, this anger and this rage just completely took over. And I was angry moving forward. And the next day, I had thrown this rock at this kid's little brother. And then my anger was what ruled me all the way.
Did you ever tell anybody about what happened?
I did later when I entered treatment as a teenager. But
you kept that to yourself all those years.
Right. And the biggest thing that affected me was not that it happened to me, because I had disassociated so far from how I was feeling, but I was upset that I couldn't protect my sister.
Sure.
So, as it progresses, it makes sense of why at 8,
right.
This is an awful life. Nobody loves each other. I want out. Mm. So, and then
that
just
seems
anger.
like a lot for anyone to carry, let alone an 8-year-old girl. And you said that from that point on, anger kind of ran your life for you. Mm-hmm. And was that more of a self-defense mechanism from that point on? I don't know if that's a thing. Hey, if I'm angry, then people know that I'm not to be messed with.
Right. And I think it's a combination. My parents are both children of alcoholics. And so even though they don't have addiction issues themselves, they definitely have a lot of traits and characteristic of alcoholics, right? It wasn't like we sat down and talked about how we felt. It was very isolated, very lonely. My parents are very depressed. And I didn't know that, but it just, I didn't feel loved. I didn't feel like I could be myself. So there's a lot going on, and I never.
That's common for, just so you know, children who grow up in an alcoholic home who don't drink themselves often become kind of withdrawn. They don't talk about their feelings, rigid attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors. And that's tough to be raised by one of those folks because you want to be close to them, and they probably want to be close to you too. They love you, I'm sure, but they don't know how because of how they were raised.
Yeah.
So at 8 years old, you find yourself in your closet eating a bottle of Tums. Do your parents come home and see what you've done? Or how does this all come to light? Or do they know about this?
I don't actually think I ever told them that. No, because I hid it. I heard my dad coming home, I hid it, and I was in trouble for not showing up to the play, but there's no way, because I'm just basing everything, I'm just going to get in trouble, and that fear of getting in trouble. So I didn't say anything. I think my parents suspected, because I remember a day that I just laid in my bed crying all day and wouldn't tell my parents. They tried to figure out what was going on, but I wouldn't say anything. So I think they knew early on that I was going to have a lot of issues to come. But I love my parents a lot, and at the end of the day, I just feel my parents did the best that they could do. And I don't ever believe that one moment my parents ever woke up and said, gee, how can I screw Terra up today? I do not hold that belief. Yeah. But, through addiction, we believe all sorts of crazy things. So for a long time, I did blame my parents for a lot of things.
Do you remember the first time you tried alcohol or any kind of substance?
Yep. So in 6th grade, we were still in West Valley. I decided smoking would be a really good idea. So I got a pack of cigarettes and smoked it all in my bedroom, and the little attention-seeking drama. I love that. I smoked like 15 of the cigarettes, went and woke my dad up and said, Dad, I want to quit. Like, come on. Like,
I've been smoking for 20 minutes. I can't live this life anymore.
I can't handle this. Anyway, so at the end of 6th grade, my parents decided that we were going to move to Bountiful and to the top of the hill in Bountiful. So now all of a sudden I'm coming from West Valley and West Valley kids, right? And I'm moving to Bountiful. And it was a huge...
So for the listener, those are very different communities here in Salt Lake.
Just remember the premise for The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Okay, yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's a lot like that.
You know what I mean? All of a sudden, you go from kind of a
Philly to Beverly Hills.
Yeah, but in a sense, it's kind of what it felt like to you as a teen, maybe?
Oh, yeah. That's exactly what it felt like. I was super excited that we had a big house. It was the worst house on the block, but it was still a big house, and everything was clean. But so I started going to school there in 7th grade, and I discovered very quickly that the kids were a lot different. And this kind of left me, since I wasn't part of the predominant religion, and it seemed to be a little worse up there. So this left me with either the rebelling ones or the 2 that weren't. And, I wasn't really a kid into peer pressure. I wanted to do drugs. I wanted to try that, because even by 12, what had happened is I felt a physical hole inside myself. And the anger defense mechanism, what I wanted to be was the toughest person ever. And I'm not kidding. My goals turned into doing every drugs possible and ending up in prison by murder. That was my goal, because I felt that would just make this image of how tough I am and that you can't hurt me. And so when I was 12, I smoked weed for the first time. I also got drunk for the first time and put my hand through a window. Should have been indicative of what was to come. So, but I also had another major suicide attempt. So at 12, 13, and 14, I was in and out of psychiatric wards. And then my parents ultimately put me in treatment as a teen.
Were there any other abuse situations in your life after 6 years old?
No, not.
No, just the anger and how about? Can I ask about at what age you became kind of sexually active?
12.
12.
Yeah, so that is a big part of my story as well. So that's what I did. I tried to fill this hole: drugs, sex, and alcohol.
You're trying to feel anything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, probably also feel powerful. I think that's partly that's a bit of the challenge of being that age when we're transitioning from childhood to adolescence. We feel awkward and we feel different, and you're trying to build an identity that you like and feels comfortable, and you were way behind the eight ball because of all these experiences that you're talking about. And so instead of just trying to feel good about yourself, you were trying to repair, this hole you felt inside. And most commonly, kids that age turn to outrageous things that are exciting or dangerous or powerful emotionally. Mm-hmm. And of course, sex and drugs and alcohol are the big ones.
That's the trifecta. I want to stop you real quick. When you said that at age 12 and 13, you were in and out of psychiatric hospitals. Mm-hmm. What was the therapy model back then? I mean, what were you diagnosed with? What were they trying to help you with? Or was this just a place for you to supposedly control reset,
So, well, I had tried to kill myself by taking a bottle of Tylenol codeine. And really what I wanted to do was my mom to hurt. I wanted her to hurt. I wanted her to miss me. So, like when I really think of like how sick that is, I mean, I know it, but just to, and so they didn't really have a choice but to put me somewhere because I couldn't be safe on my own. And I don't remember the modality, what I've been diagnosed with as a teenager. I know bipolar disorder, and then pre-schizophrenia, because I wasn't 18 yet, mood stabilizers. I was on a lot of medication in and out of those places. And for me, I personally think I was a teenager with trauma and addiction. And, so those medications for me at times made things a lot worse and couldn't really be too effective anyway because I was still using drugs. So,
as an adult, do you feel like any of those diagnoses are accurate about you?
No.
Yeah, and I was going to say that one of the difficult differential diagnostic challenges that we have with kids is when a person has a complicated trauma history, especially if addiction has already become part of it, it can look like a lot of different things. And it's tough to diagnose and tough to treat. And unfortunately, like your experience, sometimes, too often, kids get these heavy diagnostic labels and then the treatments that go along with them, and we're not really getting to the root of the problem. One thing I think we could say about human beings, especially kids, but all human beings, is life's all about having needs and trying to get our needs met. I mean, everything we do is in some form or fashion about meeting one of our needs. And a lot of those are very pro-social. It's not selfish. But as a kid, you had a need of connection and attachment with parents that weren't able or willing or whatever to attach with you. And that is such a strong basic human need, especially at that age, that you'll go to lots of lengths, including, like you were saying, attempting suicide so that my mom would miss me and she'd hurt and be sad and she'd miss me. And I actually don't see that as sick. I see that as a really unfortunate side effect of a core need for a child not being met.
You're listening to Project Recovery. We'll be right back with more of Terra's story. Welcome back to Project Recovery. Terra was just talking about how the need to feel loved and missed from your mom drove you to a suicidal attempt. And then you, right before we broke, you said, this is when it gets crazy. What does that mean?
So, I mean, I was really heavy into drugs and alcohol.
When you say heavy into drugs, so far you've just talked about marijuana, but you did say at the beginning of the podcast, your goal was to do them all.
Right. So when I was 13, somebody had slipped me something, and I didn't know what it was, but I ended up on the bathroom floor, barely breathing. And my mom had taken me to the hospital, and it turned out that it was heroin. And it was very fortunate that she'd gotten me there in time. Heroin wasn't, that was the one time by accident. But other than that, like I was not choosy. It was whatever I could get. I really wanted alcohol is what I wanted. Alcohol was my favorite. It made me feel, it just made everything okay. I guess is the best way to describe it. All that angst, all that everything.
Sort of a numbing out, and it makes you feel disconnected, right?
But you know what? That's a sad statement because I can agree with it. Alcohol made everything okay. You're not hearing her say alcohol made everything awesome. You're not hearing her say alcohol made everything better. She was just shooting for okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how sad that statement is. And I'm not slighting you because I felt the same way. I just wanted to feel okay. I wasn't asking for anything above and beyond that. Please make me feel okay. And so you said when you couldn't get alcohol, you were up for whatever was available.
Whatever was available. Absolutely.
And at this time, what, you're age 13, 14, you're sexually active, and you're up for whatever.
Yep. And my education's down the drain. The last grade that I fully completed was 6th grade because I was in and out of psychiatric wards. Plus, you couldn't get me to stay in school. I went to school to meet with my friends, to leave, to get high, wherever that was and whatever that was. I was really big into acid. And
so by junior high school, you're doing acid? Wow.
Smoking, LSD. I hadn't I hadn't tried cocaine yet. Anything I can get my hands on.
Was that hard to find when you were a kid that age?
Not in the 90s. It's actually easier to get drugs than it was to get alcohol. I
still think that's the
case.
Probably,
yeah. Well, I haven't been to a lot of drug dealers, but they normally don't ask you for an ID.
Yeah, they probably don't. They have loose rules.
You know what I mean? So I know what you're saying.
Yeah, and so by this time I was getting in trouble, smoking tickets. I was getting kicked out of school. I was getting in fights. I started the school on fire. I was expelled.
Whoa, pump the brakes. You started the school on fire?
I did do that.
What happened there?
It just, we thought it'd be very funny to go and start the school garbage can on fire and drive it back and watch it go poof. I don't know. We got scared and took off, but it happened. It was a thing. So this is the kind of kid I was, right? Destruction, screw you. I'm going to fight you and I'm going to let you know how tough I am.
I think a lot of times when a person, especially a kid who has the judgment and foresight of a kid, feels chaos inside, they sort of want to inflict chaos around them. And in an odd way, that can make a person feel a balance or even a little bit of calmness inside. And so it's not uncommon for people to project that stuff, that chaotic feeling outward.
So you're lighting garbage cans on fire. You're out there partying. Do you have a boyfriend at the time? Do you have somebody? I mean, are you running with the same crew?
At that time in junior high, it was the same group of friends. And then, so what had happened is I had made it through the system of school all the way to alternative school, totally different building, bused really far. But then I got kicked out of there too. And so this is when I'm 14. And at 14, I decide I'm grown up now and I don't need to live at home anymore. So I go and I move in with my friend and just told my parents nonchalantly, it's not working out for us.
We need to have a talk, Mom and Dad. You're not really meeting my needs.
Yeah. So they said, okay. And I was like, but they had a plan. And their plan was they'd scoop me up and put me in a long-term treatment center. A 12-step program. So I spent the next year there. And
you spent the next year at a long-term residential
teen treatment center, 12-step program. So what happened is early on, it was drilled into my head that I'm an addict. All right. And the steps were introduced to me. And I like to say that because the steps were always part of my addiction as well, which is an interesting twist for me.
I just want to be clear. So here you are, 14, you decided to move out, but your parents agreed temporarily because they had this plan to send you to an RTC, right? And while there, like, do you feel like, maybe even just in retrospect, looking back on it, do you feel like you were an addict yet at that point? Or was it kind of part of the treatment that made you feel like you were an addict?
I feel like it was part of the treatment and the expectation.
Because they treated you like you were already an addict.
Yeah. And so, and that was hard for me because I felt I really felt like I was the problem, and that if I could just be better than I was, my family would be okay. And then I would switch to, well, why don't they have to do anything? Because you think that. And so, but it was very drilled into me, no, you're the problem, you're accountable. And knowing what I know about treatment and how, addiction goes, I understand it now. But then it felt like, get rid of Terra, she's the problem. And if Tara's not here, then our family will function a lot better. And because, my family, I was not nice to my siblings, and before I could come home from this treatment center, my parents had me sign this, if I ever hurt my siblings again, that I would not be able to live there at all. And
had you had a lot of run-ins with your siblings, physical?
I was very cruel. So I understand why they did that. At the end of that treatment center, they let me back into public school because I had was doing so well. But then I relapsed, and then I tried to kill myself again at the end of this program. And they told my parents, they said, Terra,
while you were still in the program, you attempted suicide at the program?
So this is your fourth attempt. And do you remember the reason why? I mean, because it seemed like you were doing good. You were just getting ready to get let back in public school, move back in with your family, and...
No, I don't know. I don't remember.
Well, don't you think that might have been part of it?
Maybe.
Because, I mean, if I understand what you're saying, you felt like you've described the fact that you've had this, you called it a physical hole inside. You felt physically incomplete or broken or damaged, which a person does when they've been abused, especially sexually abused. And you also were parentified. You felt like, I'm in charge. I'm supposed to take care of things. So the problem with that is you can't get away from that feeling inside. And here you go. They're saying you're fine. You can go back to life. And you knew what that life was like, and you knew it wasn't better yet. And so I wonder if a type of fear of having to go back and face that all over again might have made you feel hopeless and suicidal.
So what happens after the fourth attempt?
So the treatment center tells my parents, you know what, Terra doesn't want to be sober. You're going to have to just let her go. And my mom told me that was the hardest thing that she ever had to do. She said she fully expected a phone call that I was going to be found dead in a ditch. But that's what they did. So I got out. So I didn't have a lot of rules anyway growing up. Not a lot of boundaries, right? My parents didn't have consequences for behavior. So I came out, and at first I was like, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to stay sober. I'm going to really do this. It lasted about 2 weeks.
And you're 15 at the time.
15, just barely turned 15. And found cocaine. And I loved cocaine. It just absolutely, and I'd never experienced a drug at that point that the instant you do it, you want instantly more. So, but I was also very crafty because I really, 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 really wanted alcohol at the end of the day. And so I got a boyfriend, this is 21, and, all my needs were met. My alcohol, I didn't have to pay for it. At 15 now, I don't know that nothing in this world's free. So I don't have to pay for it, but I am paying for it in sex, and his dad would give me free cocaine. And of course, that's not free either. So his dad would take advantage and do things to me. But in that world, I needed the drug and the alcohol more than I was willing to do anything.
So you were being abused sexually both by this adult son and his father.
Yeah.
Wow.
So as my life increases, time goes on. At 15, I'm drinking almost a full bottle a day, and my friends are begging him not to buy me alcohol anymore. But then I get, that hole is still there, and I get this great idea. And this idea comes to me that I need a baby. And if I just have a baby, everything's going to be okay. And, that will fill this hole that I have. And so I set out to get pregnant, and I did get pregnant at 15. And, the reality hit me right away after, like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that I'm actually pregnant, and then.
Were you more, is it because you couldn't drink or do drugs anymore?
No, it really was the reality hit. I want this baby to make me feel like if I just had a baby to love me, and I know now what it looks like at 15. That's all I could think about. And if somebody's never going to leave me and always love me for me. But then the reality of when I actually became pregnant is you're 15. I don't have any education. I've been using drugs and alcohol since I've been 12. I've been in and out of psych wards. This is all I know. And I'm doing community service for shoplifting, sitting in this van, pregnant, doing, side work, road cleanup. And the reality did hit me, but I could quickly push that aside and be like, no, it's going to be great. This imagination, not understanding at all the tornado that I'm about to blow through an innocent child's life.
And that type of escapism into a fantasy world, into a grandiose, like you said, fantasy world, is a pretty common technique or tool that a young person who's been abused, who feels alone, who feels hopeless and scared, you can escape into this world that you can make however you want it to be. And that becomes a tool of denial and a defense mechanism to get away from things. But now you're stuck with a biological reminder that you can't. So was that sort of this in and out of that fantasy world? I have to deal with the reality, but I want to escape into the fantasy. Mm-hmm. And you're not even old enough to get a driver's license yet.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I was able to quit using. My mom made a comment later in my life. She's like, I wish you could be pregnant all the time because you actually seem to be sane when you're pregnant, right? Because I could do this. I could stay sober.
That's impressive. So you really were able to stop drinking and stop using during your pregnancy. Did you get help from that, or did you just
Nope, I just white knuckled it. Yeah. And so the father is the 21-year-old, 22 now, and he had a drinking problem, because we don't see our own problem, right? Like, I quit, like, I'm okay now, I am good. And he was a really heavy drinker, around the clock drinker, and it got really abusive at times, physically. I had my daughter when I was 16, and then I picked up drinking again just on the weekends, because the weekends are okay. But I had all these rules, and these rules would follow me throughout my addiction. I had all these rules on myself. I had my child can't be at home. She has to be with my parents, and I'm only going to drink. I had no control once I started drinking, but I'm only going to drink on the weekends. And so as the abuse continued with him, and his drinking increased, I became pregnant again at 17. And, and my thinking is like, is so out there. My thinking was like, well, I want my kids close together anyway. Not thinking, now I'm 17, I can drive now, but my situation, very, very, very bad situation to have children in. And so by the time, and so I didn't use during my pregnancy with her. And then again, it started on the weekends. And right before I had her at 18, I had left that relationship. And then I was like, I'm going to do the thing that we addicts can do really good. We can build up this great life because, there's a lot of talents that addicts have.
Oh, amazing talents.
Amazing talents. And I'm going to go to school. And never mind that my last grade I finished was 6. I went in and tested at college level. Don't know how that happened. Did it. Started school, and I was going to be a nurse, and I was going to make a difference. And so I was a single mom with 2 kids, working graveyards, and I met a man. And then it was like, pot's okay. I can just smoke some pot and do this. Progressed very, very quickly. Moved in. Our relationship was that's where I really learned what sex and love addiction is. And we were very, very addicted to each other. I know it was codependency now, but, very, very much. And we just fueled each other. And so here my 2 little girls are at this point living in a complete party house with a whole bunch of teenagers. I'm still a teenager. I'm barely 19, right? And drinking every single day. And I would start putting them to bed earlier and earlier and earlier to like 5 o'clock just so I can get loaded. And the situations got really bad. And eventually me and my partner would lock ourselves in our room all day long. And for sex addiction, and doing the things that we were doing. And I came out of my room once. I would come out of my room to feed and change my children. And then I would go back in my room and, use. And one time I came out and my daughter, who was only 1.5, had gotten into the Ajax cleaning solution and had eaten part of it and spread it all over the house. And, it hit me absolutely so hard that I am a completely neglectful mother and I'm not taking care of my kids. So I called my parents and I asked them if they would come and take my kids. And if they wouldn't, I was going to call the state and I was going to give them my kids because I didn't know how to get out of what I was doing. And I didn't know how to take care of these 2 babies. So that became that pivotal turning point for me. I no longer have any I have to be responsible for the kids. I have to still go feed these, beautiful children. No, it's just all hands on deck.
So your parents came and took the kids, and that just removed any sort of governor on your behavior, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. So it progressed, couldn't pay rent very quickly to homelessness. And then I was on the streets.
Were you still with this boy at the time? Mm-hmm. So you and him were on the streets.
Mm-hmm.
So you said it started with marijuana, but then progressed to addiction. So is this heroin, cocaine? Is it once again whatever?
No, meth. I got and tried meth, but it was anything, and I mean anything. Like we were snorting methadone, like anything we could get our hands on, anything I could do. It did not matter what it was. I couldn't get it in me fast enough. So then it starts out, and then we're just doing our existence. And he's like, you know what? I think we should be swingers. This is going to be a great idea. and prostitution. And in my mind, I'd already been doing this for free since I've been 12. So I don't like men. I don't like women. I don't like anybody. I don't like myself. I don't have any sense of self-worth, any sense of value. I just gave my kids away, So, and I followed him into this world of swinging, and I didn't want to do it. It's hard to say that. Like I was forced. I unwillingly did these things. And here I am, 19, having sex with 50, 60-year-old men. And he would ask me, why do you have to get so drunk all the time? It's like, I was like, I have to. I couldn't drink enough to get through the things that I was doing on a daily basis. And I could not drink enough to forget what I was doing. And so, here comes the end. I'm desperate. I stopped seeing my kids because the guilt is just so bad. I can't even go visit them anymore. Because Mom, when are you gonna come get us? when do we get to come home? So I stopped seeing them completely. And at this point, I'm 20, and I'm like, I need to end it. And I get a gun, and I'm gonna go up to the mountains where nobody can find me and have this whole plan because I have nothing to live for, nothing going for me. And all of a sudden, this "you're pregnant" comes to me, and I was pregnant again, and I got angry. I was so angry at if there was a God. I was angry at God. I was like, how can you give me another kid? I can't do this. But remember, my mom was absolutely right. For some whatever reason, pregnancy, I could get stuff together. And, because it was important to me, I knew that I was making these choices for myself. I couldn't see, I couldn't do that to another human being. And that was my logical reasoning. So I found out that I was pregnant, and my sister-in-law at the time had said, you can stay in my house, in my basement. Her brother wasn't allowed to stay there, so my partner. But you have to come to these meetings with me twice a week. So I laid in that basement, and I laid there. I used one more time, and it was Halloween. And because at that point, I wasn't sure that I was going to keep that pregnancy or not, because I was realistically could see where I was at, and I did not know that I could pull anything together enough to put anything together to have this child. And I had gone to my dealer's house, and it was Halloween, and he had a loaded gun, and I put it in my mouth and took off the safety and put my finger on that trigger, and it was right there. It would have been so easy, but I just had this still voice say, it's going to be okay. And so, that was the last time I used. So I started going to this predominant religions addiction recovery. I laid in that basement for 3 months with morning sickness, and I couldn't leave because I knew if I left, I was going to use something, laying there sick and withdrawing off of multitudes of stuff. And, I built my life back together. I'd gotten into an apartment, and my kids were starting to transition back, and I was maintaining sobriety. And I joined this religion. And the day came where I found a meth pipe in my husband's church coat pocket, my second husband now. And that was it. I was like, I'm not doing this again.
He was going to church with you.
And I was like, no, I can't. I was like, I'm done, because I just got my kids back. We had some stability. I was going to get a job, but I was also very pregnant, so I was waiting. So we ended that relationship, and I maintained sobriety. And then I met my third husband. So going along, I'm doing this church thing, I'm doing this, and this is a real 180.
It sounds like it.
This is a real 180, right? That I can fit in very well in situations that I'm in, and it's like I meet this return missionary, knocks on my door, and I was like, I'm gonna marry him. It's like complete insane. So I do this complete 180, like prostitute, like on the street, lose your kids, to like a year later back, and now, I'm in love again. And, he finished serving his mission. He never went home, and, then we did.
So he came and knocked on your door as a missionary.
Yeah, well,
he was a missionary.
Actually, it was my neighbor. The missionaries were coming over to my house, and he was going to give, my neighbor discussion. So, yeah, he knocked on the door, and that's how we met. And
then he fell in love with you, and you fell in love with him?
Well, yes.
And he didn't go back to his home state. He stayed here?
No. He's from Germany. He did not go back. He turned around, called me, and I picked him up from the airport. And in this time I was in recovery, and I told him, I said, I'm sober today. I don't know what that looks like. I can only promise today. And the poor guy had no clue what it actually can look like. So I'm doing this 180. I'm a stay-at-home wife. We have a house, a nice little red brick house. I have a car. I'm doing the church thing. I'm doing the soccer mom thing, right? Flipping just a few years, not even. We have another baby. Now I'm 23. I have 4 kids. I live in a complete opposite life of everything that I didn't know. But what I didn't know is how codependent that I am. And so I go back to college. I don't want to be a nurse anymore. Now so I started majoring in psychology. I want to be a therapist. I have 4 little kids and doing the whole thing. And, the day comes that my husband and my father's opinion starts to how do I explain this? It starts to really wear on me. Well, hold on, I should back up. So after my son was born when I was 23, the doctor gave me, so I've been sober now since 23. The doctor gave me a prescription for phentermine, the weight loss pill. And I didn't think twice about it. Started taking it, loved it, right? And so
it's a stimulant.
It is a stimulant.
Yep.
So I get off that, still in the back of my mind. And then I was like, you know what? I can't get any more of that, so I can use ephedrine, Sudafed, nasal decongestant, right? Same thing. So I'm taking these pills. I'm not abusing them yet, taking them, working on still sobriety. I don't understand that I'm codependent, so my dependency is on people, places, and things. My dependency is on a man, right? This is my third marriage and I'm 23. So my dependency and my self-worth is wrapped up in my husband and my dad's opinion for whatever reason, right? And I'm doing these things. And so I systematically just start giving up all these things that were working for me to keep me sober, even though in my mind I was sober because I wasn't drinking, but I'm still taking this Sudafed.